It's sort of like a holiday today. Eventually, there is a holiday next week, and eventually, last night's game and next week's holiday are going to come together, and America will have a collective hangover day. And I don't want to take away from President's Day, but I know how the world works, and as we continue to move forward, next year, this nation will celebrate 250 years. And it's
a long time.
She's doing all right,
She's kicking.
A couple things to clean up here and there, but we're doing all right. But maybe next year is the year. Maybe that's a gift to us. Right?
Is giving people the day off after
hangover day.
The Super Bowl. Yeah.
Hangover day. Luckily, I'm not hungover. I did have a couple of nice Sierra Nevada Torpedo IPAs last night, but
that's the good stuff. Good call.
But by third quarter, I had moved on to a cup of coffee and a glass of water. And trust me, after that game,
I mean, this could be the least hungover America has been after a Super Bowl in a while because the game didn't necessitate the festivities.
It was not a good game.
It was a dud.
It was not a good game. And from some of the times in my youth and a few times here and there, we have had some really bad Super Bowls. But of late, I think we've been having some much better Super Bowls. And for a little while last night, I thought we might. But the interception at the end of the second quarter, I was like, well.
The pick six is where I was like, oh.
Yeah.
The Chiefs are in the danger zone.
Yeah, it just we talked about this on Friday. By the way, hi, welcome aboard. Alongside Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. As we already said, this is the postgame show here on the game. On Friday with Langston, you and I, as we were previewing the ball game, to be fair, you and I picked, as did many, the Chiefs to cover the 1-point spread in what was basically a pick'em game. Because, hey, until you knock them off, I'm going to say that they'll figure out how to win games because that's what they do, and they have one of the better quarterbacks that's ever played the game and a terrific coach. Those two men were exposed last night, and I'll come back around to that. But we talked with Langston like, hey, this is either going to be what the Chiefs have been doing, which will be a tight game, but one that they controlled, or the Eagles are probably going to blow them out. The Chiefs only lost by 18 points, but I agree with you, and I want you, so I don't take it from you. I want you to tell people what the real score. It's like the temperature when it says there's an air temperature, but it feels
there's a feels like temperature.
Yeah, it felt like
37-0. That was the feels like score.
Yeah.
Chiefs didn't get the ball past midfield, and for the first 9 possessions of the game, Jay Phillips, no team in the NFL this year, in any game, playoff, regular season, Super Bowl, you name it, had their first 9 possessions on offense not get them past midfield.
Listen, Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes will both go to Canton at some point, and they both already deserve it. But there are coaches and quarterbacks and others, but coaches and quarterbacks get the bulk of the attention, who do have bad games. We've talked about. We were talking about it last week. The Patriots went 10 years for all of the greatness of the Patriots. The Patriots went 10 years without a Super Bowl victory.
Oh, and in the year they went 18-0 and went to the Super Bowl, a 9-7 Giants team held them to 14 points.
Yeah. Sometimes you get exposed.
Yeah.
And last night, I felt all along, again, as did millions of football fans, the Philadelphia Eagles have a better roster. The Kansas City Chiefs felt like they had a better team and a better organization in terms of not so much the franchise organization, but in terms of working within the structure that we have. We know how to win. And it's proven. They do. Again, they were 15-2 because one of the games they took the day off, literally.
Yeah. Carson Wentz was the starting quarterback.
Yeah, they took the day off. And again, that was against my team, and my team won, and my team needed that win, and I appreciate the fact that day the Chiefs took the day off, because if they hadn't, chances are a lot better that they beat the Broncos and the Broncos will make the playoffs. But I don't want to make this about the Broncos. Not yet, anyway. No, I'm kidding. But, again, Saquon was held, but Saquon had more of his team's yards from scrimmage this season than a running back has had in the last 20 years.
He accounted for 33% of their offense.
That's amazing. Their top two receivers, I think, Eagles, better than the top two receivers on Kansas City. Both have very good lines on both sides. But last night, the Chiefs, listen, I looked it up, and I didn't write it down, but I think this is right. Of the 4 Chiefs who had at least 50 carries this season, the only one to average more than 4 yards a carry was, wait for it, Patrick Mahomes. Their tailbacks didn't even average 4 yards per carry this season. And last night, I think they ran from about here to the door.
Oh,
It was brutal.
Did you hear what happened to him after the game? Or actually, not even after the game. They're still stuck at the Superdome. You haven't seen that, right? Someone spray painted a first down marker in front of the running back room, and they're afraid to get past it. They're still stuck.
Their
They may never leave.
And Andy Reid's, this is why I say both men, Andy Reid, Patrick Mahomes, got exposed. Both men, you know where the strengths are, and you know how to negate it, and there was nothing different there. And then I think ultimately Mahomes kind of got spooked into making some bad throws. Like, you know, there was one where Kelsey was wide open, and Mahomes just threw it like low and left. I'm like, dude, you never do that. What just happened? Like, Kelsey was there, ready to make a first down play.
First one, is that the first drive, I guess, where he throws it behind him?
Yeah, behind him.
Yeah, throws it behind him.
And Travis has to, like, reach way over. But the ball, even if he had reached, I mean, like, you can't, you know, and especially an old dude right now, like, don't ask him to contort that way because that's not going to happen. You got to put it where, and he, you know, 99 out of 100 times, I feel like he does. You know, the garbage time yardage padded the stats, but I love your 37-0 portrayal of this because I feel like that's pretty darn accurate what we saw last night. Philadelphia just came after that offense. The defense for the Eagles, we know it's spectacular. Again, the Chiefs defense is really, really good. Mm-hmm. And when the Chiefs decided and Steve Spagnuolo decided, okay, don't let Barkley control the game, the Eagles did have an answer.
They took what they gave them.
Yeah.
And that's what the Chiefs have been doing all season long.
And last night, Kansas City didn't, man.
With, like, the Chiefs were the perfect team at just taking what the opposing defense is giving you. And every defense that plays against Kansas City respects Patrick Mahomes' arm strength, and they play too high safety, and they force you to have to beat them, death by paper cut. And that's what Kansas City has done in a majority of their games. They haven't had an incredibly explosive offense this year. It's been one of the least explosive offenses of any team that has ever won 15 games in an NFL regular season. They don't live and die by the big play because defenses are taking that away. So they would get little, bits and pieces here or there and methodically march down the field. And that's how they generated a ton of their offense this year. And last night, the Eagles on offense kind of flipped the script there because they sold out to stop Barkley. Mm-hmm. I mean, Barkley never really had a lot of room to run, but the pass protection for the Eagles was phenomenal. And A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith and even Jahan Dotson were winning their one-on-one matchups on the outside, and the Chiefs were forced to play, straight up man-to-man on the perimeter, and the Eagles had better athletes and a quarterback who was able to get them the ball.
I've seen a lot of things like, well, let's pump the brakes on a Chiefs dynasty. No, there's no need.
You still won 3 Super Bowls since.
Yeah, and I think as we pointed out, every game, every season rather that Patrick Mahomes has had has ended no worse than in a championship game appearance. So no, I'm not at all buying into that, no. And I think they will be fine. They still have a good core group on defense. They've got a pretty good offensive line. They need to get him some weapons, but Andy Reid's going to have to look himself in the mirror on finding someone who can help Patrick Mahomes because when you and I were talking, I had not – I will admit, and you haven't heard me say this to you yet, despite the fact that we spent 45 minutes talking this morning. The more I've read – the more of this I am putting on Patrick Mahomes. Not to say that he's out there making all the play calls or that he handles the purse strings or anything like that, but a couple of the analytical breakdowns really described in good detail just how long he holds on to the ball. And I know it's because he wants, like a lot of quarterbacks, at every level. We talk about it all the time. Man, you got to get rid of the ball. You got to get rid of the ball. You got to get rid of the ball. And he knows he can make a play. He just knows it, and that's great. I'm not saying that he's wrong. He can't. He's Patrick Mahomes. He's proven it. But last night, with nobody there, like, son, you got to do something else. And it was just too little too late when it finally came. And by then, Philadelphia was like, sure. We'll go one-on-one coverage here. Sure. And they never blitzed.
Not a single time.
That's the crazy thing. There was no blitzing.
Single time. And they got pressure on over 50% of the dropbacks.
So, I mean,
that's insane.
And that's when I come back a little bit to Andy Reid. And, did the Chiefs adjust at halftime? And they got the ball, too. And they just, as soon as they got out there, it's like, well, that drive's
and
over.
what killed that first drive? A sack.
Yeah.
Like, that was the big thing, is the Eagles didn't have to have, like, these incredibly exotic blitz packages or anything like that, like the stuff that we've seen Steve Spagnuolo do to other teams. Kind of like what he did to Josh Allen in the AFC Championship game, where an incredibly well-disguised blitz gets Josh Allen off kilter and he has to throw up a prayer to Dalton Kincaid at the very end of the game, right? Like, the Eagles didn't have to do any of that. The front four got pressure all night long. And this isn't kind of like what it was a few years ago. All night. But it's not like what it was in the 2021 Super Bowl, where the Buccaneers took advantage of a depleted Chiefs offensive line because of injury, right? Like, the game where Shaq Barrett had the game of his life because he was taking advantage of a turnstile at left tackle who was the third stringer. No, this is a completely healthy Chiefs offensive line that was the strength of their offense this year. And they just straight up took belt to hind end. Like, that's exactly what happened the entire game. It was an absolute, like, I still get some PTSD from hearing a belt snap from the trouble I'd get in as a kid. And hearing my dad make that noise, and it did get to realize that I was about to have a red tail for the rest of the day. But that's exactly what happened. The Eagles took the belt and snapped it and just beat up an incredibly healthy and incredibly talented Chiefs offensive line to the point where they weren't going to have anything develop because Jalen Carter and Josh Sweat and those dudes, Brandon Graham even, who came off a triceps injury, came into the game and gave them everything they could possibly handle.